someone could be listening to this and maybe not quite understand what we're talking about when we're
Yeah.
talking about emotional neglect. What do we mean when we say emotional neglect? So it's defined as a relationship pattern where an individual's needs are consistently disregarded, ignored, or neglected, and possibly invalidated or unappreciated by a significant other. So that could be a partner, or in the case of development, a primary caregiver. And so in terms of our childhood as being an ACE score, it's one of the criteria for having an adverse childhood experience that then later impacts your health, right? And in this ACE study, they define emotional neglect as having a feeling that no one in your family loves you or thinks you're important or special, and that your family is not looking out for each other. And there's not that feeling of closeness, that you don't feel that you're able to express your emotions and have them received and have someone attune and co-regulate with you through that experience.
I think of words and phrases like, I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. We've talked so many times on here before about the endless channels of communication between a mother and a child or the primary caregiver, and how much this also includes emotional states that are being communicated through the nervous system. These open lines of communication allow us to feel each other from the inside out. So in that feeling, in your primary caregivers, their nervous systems, your parents, their nervous systems are disconnected from yours. And we feel that. We feel that disconnection within ourselves. And that disconnect leads to really high stress states in our bodies. The emotional state transfers happen so very quickly. And particularly in our early development, we feel their stress. We feel their joy. We feel everything that is happening. And when we're in these little tiny bodies, particularly in those first 18 months of development, we don't have another way to emotionally regulate.
I really think we could blow it up from there to look at, like, as a society, we are not taught to emotionally express, to emotionally regulate. And so that pattern just goes on. And so people are coming into parenting or to raising a little developing nervous system, and they don't have the skill for emotional regulation. They're moving into patterned responses that have been passed down and conditioned through our society. And so everyone is coming in under-equipped unless they've done a lot of work for the most part. And so it's just perpetuating that cycle. And I think it's important to understand, as we're looking at this, the blame is not on really any one person. It's a huge systemic thing. And the effects are on the individual nervous system.
Yes.
Right? Like, so I would have these big tantrums, would not feel safe to express it. The amount of dysregulation was so big that it was very threatening for my nervous system to experience those emotions and not have the co-regulation. And that is where my patterns of deep emotional repression started, where I stopped being able to feel and sense some of my interoceptive deficits, where all of this was getting patterned in because it wasn't safe to experience the big emotions that I was experiencing. And then fast forward later into life, and I can start to connect those dots of like, oh, this is why I internalize so much of my emotional stress. This is why it shows up as inflammation and autoimmune, why I don't have the skills to regulate and process emotions. That's where the patterning happened.
Yeah.
Not to blame anyone, but just to understand, where does this come from?
Right. I have a fight response. Surprise. Everyone knows that. But I could feel that disconnect, and it made me angry. It made me really angry to not feel seen or heard, to not be attuned to not feel like no one understood who I was, or really no one knows me. And to be honest with you, I still experience a little bit of that, like I don't feel known, because the patterning for me is to hide and to shut down who I am, to keep the primary regulated. I can't be my full self fully expressed. And that creates frustration, annoyance, rebellion inside of me too, where I feel angry by that. And I feel when I am, have to stay really on top of my fight response and the reactions that come with anger, because it can spin so far out for me, and it will often, if it starts to turn outward, I know that something is going on, but it's the inward expression of anger that I have to be really careful and mindful of, the way that I speak to myself, and even the thought loops of like having fake arguments, or pretending like I have to defend myself, like pretending like there's a scenario, like say I'm in the grocery store, I'm out with Evie, where I'm like, I have to defend all of a sudden. And it's like, no one said anything.
Yes. Yeah, I totally get that. And I think we have to remember underneath anger and fight and defense is, possibly a boundary violation, possibly injustice, possibly a need not being met.
Yeah.
Make sure to subscribe to this episode on our audio platforms, or hit the little bell on YouTube to subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode, because we have lots of exciting conversations coming up, breaking down the science and the trauma of emotional health and nervous system resilience.